For those of you who have not heard about female genital mutilation, let me go through, give a little background shortly. The World Health Organization qualifies 4 types. One is the partial or total removal of the clitoris. Type 2 is the removal of the labia minora. Type 3 is the closing of the opening. Type 4 are all other types. Just one thing, these are not as clear-cut as in the definition of the WHO, because, for example, as we have in several cases in Egypt, a type 2 can heal in a way that it ends up being a type 3. Usually type 3 is not done. It's also called pharaonic circumcision. It's not done in Asia. What's wrong with it, as you can see in this picture, is it was taken in Iraqi Kurdistan, which is where the organization I work for, U.A.E, is based, or which is also where we started working on FGM. It's very painful. It's child abuse. This can lead to lifelong trauma. We have, for example, there's a study from Kuwait which was done interviewing pregnant women and found that 80% of these pregnant women had flashbacks, which is resulting in like very bad feelings towards pregnancy, towards your child, fear of delivery. Certain cases, type 3, but also type 2, there's great problems having delivery. Here in the Gulf, we know, we're working with a professor from Saudi Arabia. And he, by the way, he became a very strong opponent of FGM because he was treating immigrants from Sudan, from Somalia, also from Egypt. And after what he had seen, he just said, this, I'm a devout Muslim, this is un-Islamic, people should not do this. And he says all these women, they get immediately cesarean in Saudi Arabia because it's too dangerous otherwise. Big problem, of course, is also sexual dysfunction, meaning women do not feel pleasure or not as much pleasure during intercourse. Infections, cysts, other problems. Why is it done? Well, this is interesting because we have different results in different countries, and there's a difference between Africa and Asia. In Asia, it's mostly done for traditional reasons. It is not an Islamic practice in Africa. It's done by Christians. It's even done by Jews in Ethiopia, and by Muslims and animists, so forth. It's done to preserve women's chastity, for hygienic reasons, beautification. Sometimes there's myths, like in Sudan, they believe if they don't cut, then the clitoris will grow to become a penis or something. There is also the explanation that it's sunnah. In Africa, this is very rarely referred to. Asia more often. This is just a map to show you how widespread it is. The more east you get, the more religion plays a role in explaining it. In Egypt, the majority says it's to preserve a woman's chastity. A tiny minority says it's for religious reasons, even though this has changed a little bit with the Muslim Brothers promoting it recently. In Oman and Iraq, already 50% say it is in line with Islamic teachings. In Malaysia and also Indonesia, it is 80–90% who believe it has something to do with Islam. There is a huge dissent. There's fatwas saying it's prohibited because there's a do not harm principle in Islam. And there is one law school, actually the Shafi'i law school, not all of them, but the majority of them, say it's obligatory. So other differences we find is connection between education and class. In Africa, it's very much connected to education. The more educated women are, the less they do this to their daughters. In Southeast Asia, it's a middle-class phenomenon. it is done more by the urban middle class than in the villages, which is something completely new to us, and we don't know how to deal with this now, how to develop campaigns. Another difference is, for example, that men in Asian countries are more opposed to it than women. In Egypt, for example, men favor it more than women. We also have a very interesting development or situation. We have a lot of male activists. We're working with male, as I mentioned, the professor from Saudi Arabia. We're working with male activists in Iran, in Malaysia, in Iraq. Recently, I read a blog by Leila Hussein, who is a very prominent anti-FGM activist in Britain from Somalia. And she wrote, whenever I go to conferences about FGM, it's 98% females. Now, we can't say that. This all has to come into a strategy, what to do. And it's very different for every country. Here you see a sign of one of our FGM-free villages in Iraqi Kurdistan. What we do there is we have mobile teams going to the villages. This consists usually of 2 community workers. They talk with women. They also talk with men, but usually with women. They show a film that has voices from women, but also from doctors, from a cleric that explains that it's actually not sunnah, which is very important for the women there. And then after they have a discussion, and this usually takes a couple of months, they come back and forth, these mobile teams, and visit the women, discuss with them. They all sign a contract saying they won't do it anymore. And the Anjuman, which is the mayor in these villages, also signs a contract, and he's the one responsible. We have one Anjuman who's really great. He's now like talking to all the other Anjumans about this. The other thing we did in Iraq was important to have a profound study. It was important with this study. We went to Parliament, to the parliamentarians, and asked them if they could push for a law. This was passed in 2011. And now we already have a situation that we have in some areas, it has dropped from 99% to 48%. In Egypt, for example, we had a much slower development. And I think this is not the fault of people in Egypt, of activists in Egypt, but there's a different situation. It's been known that it exists in Egypt, and it's been a topic since very long. Already in 1904, Rashid Ridda, who's an Islamic cleric, talked against FGM. It was outlawed in 2008, and there were campaigns before that against it, and the government also said it was not good. But still, we have rates of 95%. It was 98% before. But we do have a situation, positive results now, because schoolgirls rates are down to 50%. Indonesia, different development. It was banned before in 2006. Then the Muslim groups pressured the government, and it was legalized again. And now activists say that rates are going up.